This is the automotive lie that's costing Americans billions of dollars every single year. And there's a good chance you believe it right now. If anyone has ever told you to change your oil every 3,000 miles, I need you to pay close attention because that advice comes from technology in your grandfather's car. We're talking about 1960s engine oil that had none of the chemistry we have today. Here's what makes this complicated though. While the 3,000-mile myth absolutely costs you money, I'm also going to show you the real dangers of going too long between oil changes. Class action lawsuits involving millions of vehicles prove that extended intervals can destroy your engine too. Today we're going to cut through all the noise, and I'll show you exactly what your car actually needs, why the quick lube industry has been caught lying to customers, and how to find that sweet spot that protects your engine without wasting your money. Understanding why the 3,000-mile rule exists means going back to the 1950s and 60s when motor oil worked completely differently than it does now. Back then, the chemistry was primitive by today's standards. Sophisticated additive packages didn't exist. Synthetic base stocks weren't available for consumer vehicles. Detergent additives had only been introduced in the 1950s, and multi-grade oil technology had barely gotten off the ground. Here's something that might surprise you. In the early 1950s, the recommendation wasn't even 3,000 miles. It was 2,000 miles. By 1960, that number crept up to 3,000 as oil technology improved slightly. But here's where things get interesting. 1971 marked the year Jiffy Lube opened its first store and invented something we've all seen. That little sticker on your windshield reminding you when to come back. That's when the 3,000-mile rule stopped being a recommendation and became marketing. An industry analysis put it bluntly, stating that fast lube chains, which first entered the market in the 1970s, adopted and amplified the message through sustained marketing campaigns, and that these chains owned by major oil manufacturers had a financial interest in seeing customers frequently and selling more oil. Now, I want you to think about that for a second. The companies selling you oil changes have a direct financial interest in you changing your oil more often. That doesn't necessarily mean they're wrong, but it should make you ask questions. Meanwhile, oil technology kept advancing. In 1972, the first 100% synthetic engine oil received API qualification. In 1974, Mobil 1 launched commercially. And in 1988, General Motors introduced the first oil life monitor system, which we'll talk about later. By 2020, we had the API SP specification with protection specifically designed for modern turbocharged engines. The oil in your car today is nothing like what your parents or grandparents used. So if 3,000 miles is outdated, what do the people who actually build your car say? Every major automaker now recommends intervals that run 2 to 5 times longer than that old 3,000-mile rule. Toyota says 10,000 miles or 12 months under normal conditions. Honda recommends 7,500 to 10,000 miles. Ford says 7,500 to 10,000 miles. GM and Chevrolet recommend 7,500 miles. Hyundai and Kia say 7,500 miles. Even Volkswagen goes up to 10,000 miles, and BMW pushes it all the way to 15,000 miles for some models. Consumer Reports put it simply, saying that many automakers have oil change intervals at 7,500 or even 10,000 miles and 6 or 12 months, and that this has not been the case for some time. That phrase, for some time, matters here. We're not talking about a recent change because manufacturers have recommended longer intervals for years now. AAA's official position calls the 3,000-mile rule a myth and states that you can drive anywhere from 5,000 miles to as much as 15,000 miles, depending on your vehicle, the type of motor oil, and your driving conditions. Steve Mazur, who served as manager of AAA's research center, explained that more frequent than necessary oil changes won't gain any additional life for your engine or any improved fuel economy, and that in reality it will make little or no difference to the performance of the vehicle. Let's talk numbers, because this is where it gets real for your wallet. California government data from CalRecycle surveys revealed that almost 15 million Californians change their motor oil every 3,000 miles or less, which works out to roughly 50% of drivers in the state. When you count everyone who changes more often than manufacturers recommend, that number jumps to 75% of California drivers. Now let's break down what this costs you personally over time. AAA found that the average synthetic oil change runs about $70, while conventional costs about $38. Most modern cars require synthetic, and here's what happens over 100,000 miles if you're using it. At 3,000-mile intervals, you're doing 33 oil changes, which adds up to $2,310. At the manufacturer-recommended 7,500-mile interval, you're doing 13 oil changes for $910 total. That difference of $1,400 over 100,000 miles represents savings of roughly $140 per year just by following what your car's manufacturer already tells you to do. A MarketWatch survey found something unexpected here. Gen Z drivers are actually more likely than baby boomers to follow the 3,000-mile myth, and only 25% of baby boomers change at that interval, making them the least likely generation to fall for it. Beyond your wallet, CalRecycle estimated that if motorists just followed manufacturer recommendations, California alone would save approximately 10 million gallons of waste oil per year. And 1 gallon of used oil can contaminate 1 million gallons of drinking water. So this isn't just about money. It's an environmental issue too. Now I need to tell you about something that doesn't get talked about enough. Documented fraud in the quick lube industry. Scientific American described the economics bluntly, explaining that the oil change industry demands pushing customers to get their oil changed more frequently whether they need it or not, and that one of the largest chains called Jiffy Lube is owned by Penzo Quaker State and has an incentive to sell as much of the company's traditional petroleum-based oil as possible. But it goes beyond just pushing frequent oil changes because there have been actual fraud investigations with hidden cameras rolling. NBC4 Los Angeles conducted undercover investigations in 2004, 2006, and 2013. Their testing found that 7 out of 11 Los Angeles area Jiffy Lube locations attempted to sell unnecessary repairs using what investigators called false and misleading statements. Those hidden cameras recorded employees charging for repairs that never happened, rigging diagnostic tests, and recommending air conditioning service without performing the required tests first. Bruce Hotchkiss, a former investigator with the Bureau of Automotive Repair, watched the footage and concluded they were committing fraud, that they flat out lied, and that it appears they had the intent to lie. This wasn't a one-time thing either. In 2016, following 37 undercover operations, the California Bureau of Automotive Repair placed 36 Jiffy Lube court documents from the Thompson versus Jiffy Lube International class action lawsuit in 2008 alleged that commission and quota systems encouraged unfair sales tactics. According to the lawsuit, technicians were threatened with the loss of their jobs if their ticket average wasn't in the $50 to $70 range. The lawsuit also claimed technicians were required to show air filters to all customers, even if an air filter wasn't needed. Consumer Reports found that 18% of readers who used quick lube centers complained the shop tried to sell them services they didn't want. I'm not saying every quick lube shop is dishonest, but the incentive structure is something you should know about before your next visit. Let's take a step back and understand what's actually happening to your oil over time, because this will help you understand why intervals matter. Motor oil degrades through 3 main pathways, and heat accelerates all of them. The most common pathway is oxidation. Your oil molecules react with oxygen to create various compounds that eventually increase the acidity of your oil. As your oil circulates, it picks up contaminants. Soot from incomplete combustion acts as an abrasive, where metals like iron, chromium, aluminum, and copper come from your engine components. Unburned gasoline can slip past piston rings and dilute your oil. Moisture accumulates from condensation, especially during short trips. And combustion byproducts build up over time. Real chemistry happens inside your engine, and that's why oil changes matter. But here's the key point to remember. Modern synthetic oils and additive packages have been engineered to handle this process for much longer than 3,000 miles. Speaking of synthetic oil, let's talk about whether it's actually worth the extra money. In 2017, AAA conducted a study testing synthetic and conventional oils across 8 industry standard tests. They measured shear stability, deposit formation, volatility, cold temperature pumpability, and oxidation resistance. The result? Synthetic oils outperformed conventional oils by an average of 47%. Conventional oil typically needs to be changed every 3,000 to 5,000 miles and lasts about 3 to 6 months. Synthetic oil can go 7,500 to 15,000 miles and last up to 12 months. And here's something that tells you everything you need to know. 83% of service professionals choose synthetic oil for their own personal vehicles. When the people who work on cars every day pick synthetic for themselves, that speaks volumes. Now, some vehicles actually require synthetic. If you have a turbocharged engine, synthetic is essential. Most vehicles manufactured after 2010 specify synthetic oil, and you should always check your owner's manual for what your specific car requires. Many modern cars have an oil life monitor that tells you when to change your oil. But can you actually trust it? These systems are algorithm-based estimation systems. They do not directly measure your oil condition. GM pioneered this technology back in 1988, and it was developed by Dr. Shirley Schwartz and Donald Smolensky at GM Research Laboratories. Here's what your car's oil life monitor actually tracks: engine revolutions and RPM, idle time and trip duration, oil and coolant temperature, ambient temperature, and oil pressure and engine loads. It takes all of this data and estimates how much life your oil has left. Edmunds put this to the test. They drove a Pontiac G8 for 13,000 miles before the oil life monitor triggered a change. Then they sent the oil to a lab for analysis. The result? The oil could have safely delivered at least another 2,000 miles of service. So yes, these systems are generally accurate. But there's an important limitation. Oil life monitors cannot measure actual oil condition, detect contamination, or distinguish between premium synthetic and cheap conventional oil. They assume you're using manufacturer-specified oil. If you put in the wrong oil, the monitor has no way of knowing. Now here's where things get tricky, and this is something most people don't realize. Only about 20% of vehicles are driven under truly normal conditions. A Filter Manufacturers Council survey found that 4 out of 5 drivers actually operate under what's called severe service conditions. AAA research revealed something fascinating. While only 6% of drivers believed they drove under severe conditions, when asked about their specific driving behaviors, 62% actually did. So what counts as severe service? Short trips under 5 to 10 miles where your engine doesn't reach full operating temperature. Stop-and-go traffic with extended idling. Extreme temperatures, either above 90 degrees Fahrenheit sustained or below freezing. Dusty or sandy environments, and towing or hauling heavy loads. Let me explain why short trips are so hard on your oil. When your engine doesn't reach 200 degrees Fahrenheit or higher, moisture in the crankcase doesn't evaporate. Cold engines run rich, allowing more unburned fuel into the crankcase. Combustion byproducts don't burn off, and the detergents and dispersants in your oil work best at operating temperature. This is why manufacturers have different recommendations for severe service. Toyota drops from 10,000 miles to 5,000 miles. GM goes from 7,500 to as low as 3,000 miles. Subaru drops from 6,000 to 3,000 miles. So before you celebrate those extended intervals, you need to honestly assess your driving habits. If you're mostly doing short trips around town, sitting in traffic, or driving in extreme temperatures, you might be in the severe service category without knowing it. Now I've spent most of this video telling you that 3,000-mile oil changes are unnecessary. But I need to be honest with you about the opposite extreme, because going too long between oil changes has real consequences. And I'm not just speculating here. There are class action lawsuits involving millions of vehicles that prove it. In January 2007, Toyota settled a massive oil sludge lawsuit covering 3.5 million vehicles from 1997 to 2002. The settlement extended warranties to 8 years with unlimited mileage and covered engine repair, replacement, loss of value, and rental costs. Individual repair costs ran $7,000 to $8,000 per affected customer. The total settlement value was potentially hundreds of millions of dollars. Here's what's really interesting. Toyota initially blamed owners for inadequate maintenance before settling. They said customers weren't changing their oil often enough. But the settlement suggests the problem was more complicated than that. Volkswagen and Audi faced a similar situation with their 1.8T engines. In August 2004, they instituted an 8-year unlimited mileage, extended warranty covering 426,000 vehicles from 1997 to 2004. Chrysler's 2.7-liter V6 engine became infamous for sludge problems. A class action was consolidated in February 2009, alleging the design caused oil sludge formation to an unacceptable degree. The engine had a small oil capacity of only 5 quarts versus the typical 6, which made oil deteriorate faster. Engine failures were reported at 50,000 to 60,000 miles, with some happening as early as 20,000 miles. And there's an ongoing situation with Hyundai and Kia's Theta 2 engines, affecting 2011 to 2019 vehicles with 2.0-liter and 2.4-liter engines. These have experienced bearing failures, leading to engine replacement costs of $6,000 to $15,000. Over 1.6 million vehicles were recalled between 2015 and 2017. The point here isn't to scare you. It's to show you that while 3,000 miles is too often, there's a real upper limit. Follow your manufacturer's recommendations, but don't try to push beyond them. Before we wrap up, let me give you the warning signs that indicate your oil has degraded too much. First, check the color. Fresh oil is amber or golden. Normal used oil gets darker brown, and that's totally acceptable. But if your oil is completely black and opaque, it's past due. And here's a critical one. If your oil looks milky or coffee-colored, that indicates coolant contamination. Stop driving immediately and get it checked. Other symptoms include a burning oil smell and blue or white exhaust smoke. So let's bring this all together. Follow your specific vehicle's manufacturer recommendations. Use the oil type your car specifies, usually synthetic, for modern vehicles. Check your oil level monthly. And honestly assess whether your driving patterns qualify as severe service. Because remember, 80% of drivers actually fall into that category, whether they realize it or not. Modern oil life monitoring systems are generally accurate, but they assume you're using the correct oil. The goal isn't to change your oil as often as possible or as rarely as possible. It's to change it at the right interval for your specific car and driving conditions. If this video helped you understand oil changes better, hit that like button and subscribe for more content that helps you make smarter decisions about your car. And drop a comment below. Were you changing your oil every 3,000 miles? I'd love to know. I'll see you in the next one.